Tonight, the story is about the safest place in the galaxy, which had no idea how fragile it really was. You're used to danger, looking dramatic, alarms, disasters, obvious villains. But the thing that fascinates me here is quiet safety that's been running so smoothly for so long that everyone forgets it's being held together by physics, metal, and habit. It really makes you wonder what happens to people who grow up in a world where the air never changes, the rain is scheduled, and nothing unexpected ever happens. Do they actually know how to stay safe? Or have they just never been tested? And then you put a human from Earth into that mix. Someone who grew up checking storm forecasts before school, who knows what it means when the wind shifts or the water creeps higher up the street. It's a strange thought, isn't it, that the so-called Deathworld kid might be the calmest person in the room when things finally stop behaving? So get comfortable, settle into whatever you're lying on, because we're about to drift into a ring habitat where the stars hardly seem to move, and the weather is as gentle as a screensaver. Inside Meridian Collegium, students joke about Deathworlds in a tidy lecture hall that has never seen a real emergency. And on the back row, a quiet human named Naomi Park is about to raise her hand, walk down to the board, and very politely start dismantling everything they think they know about danger, safety, and what it means when a world refuses to stay still. The stars outside the ring moved so slowly that most students forgot they were moving at all. Inside Meridian Collegium, the air was always soft and mild, the gravity steady, and the light the same warm shade of afternoon. Rain came twice a week at the same hour. Wind never rose above a gentle breeze. The trees grew straight and calm under a sky. In this place, the idea of a death world was a safe joke from far away, like an old story about a monster that no one really believed in anymore. Until the day a quiet human from Earth raised her hand and asked to use the board. Meridian Collegium sat in the dark between stars, turning at a kind, slow rate. The ring habitat was wide and bright inside, with long parks, bright study halls, and lakes that never had storms. Students walked along smooth paths under tall trees that were trimmed by robots, and the smell of the air never changed very much. Temperature stayed just warm enough for light jackets. Gravity held feet to the paths and a gentle pull, and the sky overhead was a soft false blue painted on the inner curve of the ring. Every part of life here was planned so that nothing would surprise anyone. Doors always opened, lights always worked. Water always came out clear, at the right pressure and the right warmth. Many students had grown up on planets that were just as calm, with mild seasons and slow, gentle shifts they could mark on a calendar. For them, Meridian felt like home made even safer. In this calm place, there was a popular elective course called Deathworld Studies, which met twice per week in a wide lecture hall with curved seating. The seats were soft, the air smelled faintly of flowers, and the walls could show full wall projections in high detail. The class had become famous for being an easy, fun way to fill a requirement for planetary systems. It was known as the popcorn class, even though real popcorn annoyed the air filters. On the day our story begins, the hall was almost full. Dozens of students settled into their seats, some with warm drinks, some with fruit gels, some with small gliding study drones floating nearby. There were tall, thin Arasi with four-jointed arms. Clustered in the back, there were three moss-coated Elians sitting together in the middle row, misting themselves with gentle sprays of water. Near the aisle, a broad-shouldered Keth with thick fur leaned back with a relaxed grin, claws tapping lightly against a drink cup. A small group of humans sat together off to the side, and further back, apart from them, sat Naomi Park. Naomi had chosen a seat on the last row of the lower section, close to the wall. From there, she could see the whole room and the instructor's platform. Her dark hair was pulled back in a loose tie, and she wore the standard collegium jumpsuit with a light jacket tied around her waist, just in case the air temperature changed a few degrees. Old habit, her tablet was open but dimmed. She had seen this lecture before. Instructor Vel arrived right on time. As always, Vel was a tall, blue-skinned Ferali with smooth skin that caught the light and large, calm black eyes. Vel's voice was gentle and even, the sort of voice that made students relax. Vel did not like stress. Vel did, however, enjoy a bit of drama. "Good afternoon, everyone," Vel said, moving to the center of the platform. "Settle in. Today we begin our unit on Class 3 Hazard Worlds." Slang term. Vel paused, waiting for it. Deathworlds. Half the class shouted back with cheerful energy. Laughter followed, just as Vel knew it would. Naomi looked down at her hands, then back up again. She felt the familiar small tightness in her chest, but let it pass through her like a breath. Vel smiled. "Very good. Today's case study is your favorite. The legendary, the terrifying, the extremely over-oxygenated." With a small flick of a hand, Vel turned and pointed to the wall. The lights dimmed slightly. The full front wall came alive with motion. The standard Earth montage began. Huge blue oceans rolled under white clouds. The camera dove toward a spinning storm, then cut to enormous trees whipped by fierce winds. Waves crashed over a seawall, water, slamming into buildings. On the next cut, dark clouds filled the sky over a city grid, then burst open with heavy rain. Another jump showed a blizzard, white and thick, burying cars and homes. People in heavy coats pushed through the snow. Then the view changed again. Molten rock pouring from a volcano down a hill at night, glowing orange and red, while tiny human figures watched from a safe distance. Students gasped and laughed. Some shook their heads. A Urian beside the aisle pulled its mossy fronds in closer to its core in a show of mild distress, then turned it into a joking wiggle when the others looked. "Note the unregulated atmospheric dynamics," Val said in a light tone, walking slowly along the edge of the platform as the images kept playing. Strong convective cells, rapid phase changes of water, and an alarmingly casual relationship with tectonic stability. Earth has hurricanes, blizzards, droughts, floods, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and a long history of lethal microorganisms. It is also considered mostly harmless by its dominant species. The word harmless drew another round of laughter. Vel smiled, letting it ride. A student raised an arm. It was Corinne Jacks, a tall Keth, from the cool, quiet moon of Rel Kethra. Corinne's fur shimmered with health, and their eyes shone with amusement. Corinne was known for making comments that turned up in class clips later. Instructor Vel, Corinne called. Is it true that humans evolved as a sort of, how is the phrase, spite-based life form? The question was clearly meant as a joke. The hall laughed in a wave. Some students repeated the phrase, amused by the strange old human term. A set of Erasi students started typing notes while grinning. Vel tilted their head with a playful shrug. The historical records suggest that humans are highly adaptable, highly social, and very difficult to discourage, Vel said. They are a predator species that decided to build cities, and then refused to leave, no matter what the lithosphere tried to say about it. Another round of laughter. The montage shifted again. Now there were scenes of people shoveling snow from buried doorways, cars creeping through heavy rain, crews boarding up windows before a storm. A news clip showed waves hitting a pier, and people in bright vests standing calmly with measuring instruments. The music the Collegium editors had added was dramatic and overexcited. Naomi watched her home turn into a kind of comedy short. She had seen this exact edit twice already. This term, once during the first class, and once when Corinne had brought friends from another lecture. She knew the timing of every joke beat. The sequence moved through dust storms, lightning strikes, wildfire smoke, and medical diagrams of viruses and bacteria. Each time something frightening appeared, the crowd reacted the same way. Safe shock, then a touch of delight and relief. These were stories from somewhere far away, where people apparently lived right next to danger, as if it were normal. Naomi's jaw stayed loose. She forced her hands to stay relaxed on her tablet. Her heart rate was slightly up, but nothing she could not breathe through. She thought of Miami's bright mornings after storms, fresh air and downed branches, neighbors checking roof tiles and sharing food from freezers before it melted. None of that was in the montage. The sequence ended with a wide shot from orbit, Earth huge in blue and white, turning slowly under the sun. Over it, the editors had placed a bold title in Old Terran script. Deathworld. The lights came back up gently. Students clapped, some out of habit, some in honest delight at the spectacle. Corinne let out a pleased rumble and leaned forward in their seat. Vel turned to face the hall again, hands folded. So Vel said, "That is our subject. A planet whose dominant species treat hourly weather reports as part of daily life, and whose soil is full of things that try to eat them from the inside. But daily life, and whose soil is full of things that try to eat, them cause constancy." Then Monthir sighed, "A beyond the thin sea, a beyond cons cont so vi." There was more laughter. Naomi felt a small flick of annoyance at the phrase, but stayed quiet. Now Vel continued, "Before we begin our discussion, we have a special guest in our class. An actual human from Earth." Vel's eyes found Naomi at the back. Naomi Park, exchange student, xenobiology track, Naomi, would you mind standing? Heads turned. The air in the hall shifted with a mild sense of attention. Naomi felt heat in her face, but she rose calmly, smoothing the front of her jumpsuit. She had the compact build of someone used to walking in strong gravity and humid air, dark eyes steady, shoulders square, a small scar cut across one eyebrow, pale against her brown skin, from an old fall during a storm cleanup when she had been 12. Vel smiled toward her with polite interest. Naomi, Vel said, you have seen the montage. Would you say it is accurate? The question hung in the air. Some students leaned forward waiting for a dramatic reaction. A few already had recording indicators glowing on their tablets, expecting something funny to share. Naomi looked at the wall, where the earth had been, then back at Vel. Her answer came out calm and even. Mostly, she said. The room burst into laughter. A few students clapped as if she had made a joke. Mostly, someone repeated in a half shout, grinning at their friends. Vel chuckled kindly. Mostly, she says. What a charming understatement, Val said. Perhaps the storms on the video were a bit too small. More laughter. Naomi felt her jaw tighten for a second. Then she loosened it again. She took a slow breath. The laugh was not cruel, she told herself. Just easy. She lifted her hand slightly. May I use the board? She asked. The room quieted in a small wave, not sure what she meant to do. Vel blinked, surprised. Guests usually gave short, amusing comments and sat down. The board? Vel repeated. Yes, Naomi said. The display. Vel paused. Students turned in their seats to look from Naomi to Vel and back again. Corin's ears twitched with interest. The air gained a thin line of curiosity. Vel gave a slight tilt of the head. If you can keep it brief, Vel said. We do have a schedule. Naomi nodded. She stepped down the stairs between rows, past glances and small smiles, until she reached the platform. From here, the room felt larger, and the faces blended into a single watching shape. She did not let that thought settle. Instead, she reached for the control pad at the edge of the board, fingers moving in the pattern she had learned. The bright Deathworld title faded. The board cleared. Naomi brought up a simple dark background. She drew a thin circle in pale blue with a fingertip slightly tilted. Her hand was steady. She turned back to the hall, speaking in the same calm tone she would use to explain a lab mistake. It is not cursed, she said. It just moves a lot. The laughter did not come this time. The room held its breath, waiting to see what she meant. Naomi stood beside the board, her figure small against the wide, dark surface. On it, the pale blue circle leaned at an angle, a neat line that cut across an invisible center. She pointed to it with her fingertip, slow and clear. This is Earth, she said. Not to scale. Obviously. Also not alone, but let us leave the moon out for a moment, or we will be here all day. A few students smiled softly at the dry remark, but they stayed quiet. The loud laughter from before had thinned into a more thoughtful stillness. Vel folded their arms and watched, curious in spite of the schedule prompt blinking at the edge of their sight. Naomi drew a second, larger circle around the first, then marked a small star off to one side with a yellow dot. Earth goes around its star, she said. You all know that? She rotated the smaller circle along the path of the larger one, using the board's simple tools. But the important part is that the axis is tilted. Our planet does not stand straight up relative to its orbit. It leans. She tapped the angled line cutting through the little Earth circle. This lean means that different parts of the planet get more sunlight at different times of the orbit. That is what we call seasons. Not just your holiday decorations, but changes in temperature, rainfall, and wind patterns. Where I am from, we can almost set our calendar by the opening of the hurricane forecast. A Eulerian student raised a hand, mist drifting lazily from its fronds. You plan for storms before they exist, it asked, its translator giving the question a soft tone. Naomi nodded. Yes, because the general pattern is predictable, she said. On Earth, almost nothing about the environment is perfectly still, but a lot of it is regular in its own way. The oceans, the air, the land, the ice. They are all moving systems that talk to each other. They pass heat and moisture around. They shift slowly, but they do it all the time. We grow up knowing that. She widened the view. With a smooth motion, she turned the simple diagram into an image of Earth from space, this time not as a polished montage, but as a neutral model. Continents, swirling clouds, the faint lines of currents drawn over oceans like soft arrows. These are ocean currents, Naomi said, pointing. They carry warm and cold water around the globe. This moves heat from the equator toward the poles, and back again in different paths. The air interacts with that and with the land forms. Mountains, plains, ice caps. They all change how air moves. The result is that what is safe in one place at a given time will not always stay that way. She zoomed in on a coastline, showing a delta where a wide river met the sea. The class could see the river bending again and again before it reached the water. Rivers do not stay put, Naomi said. They wiggle and shift over years and centuries. They flood their banks, carve new paths, and leave old channels behind. People build near them for water, travel, and rich soil. Then the river changes its mind, and the safe zone moves. So our maps change, our rules change. We learn that forever is a very strong word. A low murmur moved through the hall, not mocking this time, but thoughtful. Some students took more detailed notes. Naomi's voice stayed even, like a teacher explaining a recipe. Coasts also move, she continued. Seas rise and fall over long spans. In my own childhood, some streets near the bay in Miami began to flood more often during high tide. So the city started lifting roads, putting in new pumps, changing building codes. It did not happen overnight, and not everything was fair, but the habit under it was simple. Look, measure, plan, talk, adjust. She traced a thin line along the coast, and then shifted it inward by a tiny amount. For many of you, Safe land is something that stays the same for many generations, she said. For humans, and for many other Earth species, safe land is sometimes a moving target. So we practice moving with it. Corin raised a hand, fur smooth and ears up. But are there not parts of your planet that are stable? Corin asked. Surely you are not fleeing every year. Naomi shook her head. We do not flee all the time. No, she said. There are many regions that feel stable most of the time. People settle, raise children, grow food, tell stories about home like anyone else. But with time, even those places change. Maybe the rain patterns shift. Maybe a river cuts deeper. Maybe a fault releases stress in an earthquake every few hundred years. The point is not that nothing is ever safe. The point is that nothing is safe without attention. The last sentence landed with a soft weight. Vel watched her with a new kind of interest, eyes slightly narrowed in thought. Naomi shifted the board again, bringing up a simple map of wind patterns and colored blobs that marked storms. On Earth, we treat storms like another kind of weather, she said. Hurricanes, blizzards, heat waves, dust storms. These events are not outside the system. They are part of how energy moves. A hurricane is a kind of heat engine. Warm ocean water and moving air feed into it. It spins up, travels, and then weakens when it runs out of fuel. It is dangerous if you stand in its way without preparation, but it is not magic. It can be tracked. An Irasi student lifted its upper right arm. So humans just live under these? It asked. Long fingers flexing, knowing they can arrive. Yes, Naomi said, but we do not just wait and hope. We forecast. We scan the oceans, watch wind patterns, measure temperatures. Satellites watch from above, sensors watch from the surface. Then the data goes into models. These are not perfect, but they give us paths and probabilities. We share that information with everyone we can reach. She drew a chain on the board. Storm icon, arrow, forecast icon, arrow, people icon, arrow, houses with shutters drawn. This is normal life on Earth, she said. Weather reports at breakfast, emergency drills at school, building codes that say how strong a roof has to be, flood maps that show which streets might be underwater after heavy rain. It is not only about fear, it is about habit. A small human student near the front nodded in agreement. Eyes bright with recognition, the Keth in the middle row tilted their head, trying to imagine regular drills. Naomi moved to a new part of the board and drew a city block. Little rectangles for homes, a larger square for a school, a small cross for a clinic. Then she placed tiny stick figures in clusters. When a hurricane heads toward a coast, for example, she said, there is a chain of actions. Forecasters issue alerts. Local leaders call for evacuations or shelter in place based on elevation, building strength, and flood history. Stores get busy as people buy water, food, batteries. Neighbors check on older residents. People bring in loose items that could fly in the wind. Schools close early. Families pick a room in the house without windows or near the center. She tapped the cluster of figures in the middle of a block. This is resilience, but not the dramatic kind you see in stories where a single hero saves everyone at the last second, she said. It is small, repeated behavior. It is texting your aunt to make sure she got the warning. It is charging your devices early. It is moving your car to higher ground. It is checking your neighbor's window boards when you finish your own. A mossy Julian lifted a frond. Does this not make life feel constantly dangerous? It asked, spraying a little more mist over its shoulders. Naomi thought about that for a second. Sometimes it is stressful, she admitted, especially if you do not have much money, or if the warnings come late, or if you have already lost a lot. But for many of us, it is also just part of the rhythm of life, like how you might plan around your planet's long dusk or your yearly storms of pollen. We build comfort into it where we can. We have storm parties with board games. We cook food that will keep well without power. Afterward, we share what did not get used. She let that image rest for a moment. People cooking together by lantern light, trading stories, while wind howled outside. Blizzards are similar in colder regions. She continued, people stock up on food, charge devices, and prepare blankets. They bring pets inside. They know which neighbors might need help if the roads close. When the snow comes, they stay indoors if they can. After it passes, everyone digs out together. Children on some worlds might have stories about perfect spring days. Children on Earth also have stories about the time school closed, and they got to build snow forts. Some students smiled at that. Danger mixed with play was a new frame for them. Naomi's tone stayed steady as she moved on. Earthquakes are harder because they are less predictable, she said, but the habit of planning is similar. In places with many quakes, people practice drills. In schools and offices, they secure heavy furniture to walls. They know safe spots under sturdy tables or door frames. After a quake, people check gas lines, look for damage, and reach out to family. She turned to a new part of the board and wrote a single word. Amacrobis. Now, she said, about the tiny things that try to eat us. The room shifted with a mix of unease and interest. Even students from calm planets knew about illness, but few had grown up with Earth's crowded, messy biosphere. Earth's biosphere is thick with life, Naomi said. From deep ocean vents to high mountain air, there are microbes everywhere. Bacteria, viruses, fungi, others. Some are useful. Many just exist. Some can hurt us. We breathe them, touch them, eat them without knowing most of the time. Our bodies have immune systems trained by constant contact. Our cultures have habits trained over long history. She drew hands on the board. Then water, then a bar of soap. Hand washing, she said. Food safety, vaccines, quarantine when needed. Masks during outbreaks, air filters, hospital protocols. These are all forms of planning for invisible weather. Invisible weather? Val repeated quietly. Intrigued. Yes, Naomi said. Microbial conditions shift just like storm patterns. A particular virus might be more common in winter in one region, less in summer, different in another place. When a new pathogen appears or an old one returns, our health institutes watch patterns and share data quickly. We alter behavior for a time. Then we ease back when conditions change. She met the eyes of a student in the front row whose planet had once dealt with a slow, creeping plant disease. Recognition passed between them like a small nod. "It can be very hard," Naomi added. "We lost many people in some outbreaks. Grief is real. But the habit stays the same. Look. Measure, plan, talk, adjust. We keep living and we keep caring for each other, even with risk. The microbes are part of the system too." Corin raised a hand again, more thoughtful now. "It still sounds harsh," they said. "Your world sounds like it is always pushing you. Does it not get tired?" She thought of warm Miami nights, street vendors after rain, family dinners with fans running. The slow rise of laughter after power came back on. "Sometimes we do get tired," she said. "Rest is important. Joy is important. We plan for those also. We build strong houses not only to survive storms but to feel safe inside them. We design cities with parks and shade where people can relax between heat waves. We share jokes about bad forecasts. We dance when the sky finally clears." She let out a slow breath, then turned back to the board. "You call Earth a death world," she said. "But for us, it is a moving world. The ground shifts. The water moves. The air changes. The microbes evolve. Nothing sits perfectly still. So from childhood, humans learn that safety is not a fixed place. It is a thing we build together, again and again, in a changing field." She drew a simple diagram, Earth in the center, arrows moving around it, labeled ocean. Air, rock, life. Around that, she drew circles with little figures holding hands. "Your homeworlds have taught you other lessons," she said. "How to live gently with a stable climate. How to respect slow cycles of light and dark. That is beautiful. How to stay calm while plans change. How to rebuild when the map shifts or the rules need updating. It is not about being built out of spite. It is about being built for adjustment." The room was almost completely silent now. Even the soft hum of drones seemed quieter. Naomi stepped back slightly from the board. "So when you watch the montage," she said, "and you laugh at people boarding up windows or digging out their cars, remember this. You are not just seeing danger. You are seeing practice, forecasts, drills, safety nets, communities checking on each other. That is the real story Earth tells." She looked toward Vel, who met her gaze with a thoughtful tilt of the head. "Deathworlds are not only about what can kill you," Naomi finished. "They are about how life learns to move with things that do not stop moving." For a long moment, no one. Then, slowly, a hand went up near the center. An Erelin student whose home star never changed brightness, whose world had mild tides and no storms stronger than a breeze. "If Earth is a moving system," the student said carefully, "could you teach us how to think that way, even if our homes do not move as much. Naomi felt something deep in her chest loosen, just a little. She nodded. Yes, she said. That is what I am hoping we can do. In the quiet that followed, the idea of Earth as just a wild joke began to bend, the way a river slowly changes course when it meets something solid and steady in its path. The mood in the lecture hall after Naomi's talk felt very different from the mood after the Earth montage. Before, students had lounged in their seats, ready to laugh and scroll through side chats. Now many sat straighter, eyes on the board where Earth still turned under its moving arrows of air and water. Questions started slowly at first, like the first drops before rain. An Irasi student raised a hand, long arm lifting, carefully. If you grow up with all this motion, they said, do you feel fear every time the forecast changes? Naomi shook her head. Not every time, she said. If the forecast says light rain in the afternoon, you remember to bring a jacket. If it says strong storm possible, you check windows and drains. Fear only helps a little. Habit helps more. A Keth student near Corin leaned forward, claws drumming lightly on the desk on Rel Kethra. They said we have only small storms, and only in one season. We prepare once, then we are finished. Your way sounds like you must always watch. Naomi gave a small smile. That is true, she said. We are always watching something, but it becomes background, like how some of you always watch your air quality or your pollen counts. Most of the time, it is just routine, not panic. Another hand rose, this time from a human student in the front row. Do you think we are too used to it? They asked. Like maybe we accept too much risk? Naomi paused, then answered slowly. Sometimes yes, she said. Sometimes we tell ourselves that because we have handled storms before. We can handle bigger ones without changing our habits. That is not wise. But the basic skill is still useful, the idea that when the data changes, you are willing to change your plan. Vel watched all this with a thoughtful look, hands folded behind their back. This was more active engagement than they had seen in this class for several terms. The students were not only entertained, they were leaning forward, comparing this strange moving world to their own. A Yilian student sent a quiet question through the shared channel, and Vel chose to voice it. Student Reethi wonders, Vel said, how you keep people from ignoring mornings when they happen often, if storms come every year. Do some humans stop taking them seriously? Naomi nodded. Yes, that happens too, she said. If an area is spared a few times while others are hit, people start to think, we are lucky, it will be fine. That is one reason we practice drills when the sky is clear. It shifts attention from luck to skill. It reminds us that the goal is not to feel brave, but to stay alive and to help each other. Corin raised a hand, fur smooth but eyes sharp. So you are saying your world trains you, they said, to be. What is the word? Adaptable. All the time, Naomi turned back to the board and cleared a part of it. She drew a simple rectangle around the word Earth and then added small icons. Storms, microbes, quakes, floods. Around those, She drew stick figures in different colors, connected by lines. "I think of Earth as a training simulator," she said, "not in the sense that it is fake, because it is very real, but in the sense that it never stops giving us practice. Practice at reading signs, practice at planning ahead, practice at working together when something goes wrong." She wrote 3 short phrases next to the stick figures. Share, information, build backups, care for others. "When we do it well," she said, "the reward is not glory. It is normal life continuing. You get to go back to school or work. You get to cook dinner again. You get to sleep in your own bed. The story ends with nothing terrible happened here this time, and that is a good ending." A soft murmur moved through the hall. Some students nodded. Others frowned, thinking it over. "So Earth is a machine that builds resilience," an Aurelian student said slowly. "In your bodies, yes, but also in your minds and communities." "That is one way to put it," Naomi said. Other Earth life is also trained by motion. Trees that bend in wind survive better than those that stay too stiff. Animals that remember many paths to water do better in drought. Microbes adapt fast to changes in hosts and environments. The whole biosphere is practicing. She looked around the hall. "Your worlds taught you other skills," she said. "Maybe you are very good at long-term planning because your climate is stable, so mistakes show up only after many years. Maybe you are very good at fine balance with a single, fragile system. Those are important skills too. What I am suggesting is that there is value in practicing for sudden change, even if your home does not do that often, because not everything in the galaxy will stay calm just because you prefer it that way." The last sentence made a few students shift in their seats. They were used to thinking of danger as something to watch, in a clip, not something that might reach their careful ring. Before anyone could answer, a soft chime sounded in Vel's ear in plant private to staff. A small notice appeared in the corner of their vision. "Esausti comet, he, content adversary, request immediate remedy." Vel's brow furrowed for a fraction of a second. They had expected some notice, perhaps, but not this fast. The committee monitored emotional indicators in lecture spaces and flagged topics that might cause distress. So far, the readings showed only heightened attention, not panic. Still, the message had the bright yellow tag for psychological strain risk. Vel touched their wristband in a subtle gesture, opening a quiet line. A text box floated in their view. "Sacidi Comet T. Instructor Vel, current guest lecture includes detailed discussion of planetary hazards and loss events. Recommend returning to curated content and reassuring framing." Vel glanced around. They saw wide eyes, yes, but also steady breathing and active note-taking. No one was crying or shaking. No one was trying to leave. They typed back. Students engaged. No visible panic. Guest is calm and measured. The reply came almost at once. "Say Sidbi Comity. The presence of a Deathworld native may normalize dangerous thinking patterns. Emphasize distance. Earth conditions are not relevant to ring life. Please redirect to standard montage review. Vel felt a small twist of discomfort. They did not like being told, even gently, to end a real learning moment and go back to easy jokes. But they also knew the committee held authority over coarse content. Naomi, unaware of the specific words but sensitive to shifts in adult body language, saw Vel's eyes go slightly unfocused for a second. She recognized the look of someone reading an internal message. She also noticed the faint tightening at the corners of their mouth. She paused her explanation and turned toward Vel. "Is there a problem?" she asked, her voice polite but clear. Vel blinked and came back to the room. A few dozen eyes followed the exchange, sensing that something important was happening under the surface. "There is a concern from the safety committee," Vel said slowly. "They worry that this content may be psychologically hazardous for students who are not used to thinking about sudden danger. They would prefer that we return to our planned material." A slow wave of disappointed sound moved through the hall. Not loud, but present. Naomi stood still for a breath, then another. She could feel a sharp response rising in her throat, but she let it pass the way she had learned to let anger cool before speaking. She met Vel's eyes. "May I ask a question?" she said. Vel hesitated, then nodded. Briefly, they said. The safety notice flashed again, asking for compliance, but Vel ignored it for the moment. Naomi turned to face the whole hall. "Is the goal to learn," she asked, "or to feel superior?" The words hung in the still air. A few students shifted. Uncomfortable Corin's ears flicked, and their fur bristled just a little. Naomi did not raise her voice. "You watch edited scenes of my home," she said, "and you laugh because you feel far away from it. You feel safe and maybe a little proud that your worlds are kinder. But if we stop the lesson when it starts to feel real, then what is this class for? Just to watch others struggle and say, 'Glad that is not us.'" No one answered. Even the small drones at the edges of the room seemed to have stilled. The idea that Earth is a death world lets you believe that danger lives somewhere else, Naomi continued, still calm. That risk is a strange thing that happens to people who made bad choices, or who come from harsh places. But there are other kinds of change besides storms. Software can fail. Power systems can overload. A ring can lose pressure in one section. You do not need a hurricane for your life to be turned upside down. You only need something you took for granted to stop working. For that, Earth's training can help you. Vel felt the words land like gentle taps on a glass surface. The safety notice blinked again, but they waited. They wanted to hear where Naomi was going. Naomi turned back to the board and cleared most of it, leaving only the word resilience. "I am not here to frighten you," she said. "I do not think it would be helpful for you to lie awake worrying about storms that will never form over this ring. But I do think it would be helpful for you to practice how to respond when something breaks. You already have drills for fire and hull breach. You already have emergency maps posted in the halls. What you do not have, from what I have seen, is practice in staying calm when several things go wrong at the same time, or when the problem is not on the list." A student near the back raised a hand timidly. We have simulations, they said. They are very controlled and supervised. Naomi nodded. Those are good, she said. But they are mostly technical. They teach you which button to push, which corridor to follow. Earth's practice is also social. It is about knowing who around you might need extra help. It is about making backup plans. It is about sharing food and information without being asked. These are skills that do not harm you if you never face a storm. They only make your community stronger. Corin crossed their arms, eyes narrow, not in anger, but in serious thought. You are soft? They asked. Naomi shook her head at once. No, she said. It is not an insult to say that someone has not had to learn a hard skill yet. It would be an insult to say they could never learn it. I do not believe that. She set her tablet on the edge of the podium and took a small breath. I have an idea, she said. A proposal, really. You can say no, but I think it might help. The room listened. I would like to start a resilience lab, Naomi said. Not a full course, at first. Just a series of sessions in the simulation rooms. We can work on basic forecasting so people learn how to read changing data and update plans. We can practice redundancy. Having backup routes, backup supplies, backup communication. We can look at shelter design and safe spaces. Even inside a ring, we can cover simple microbial hygiene, like what to do when a shared system spreads illness faster than expected. She glanced at Vel. It could be part of this class, she added, or a separate activity with open sign-up. I would work with collegium staff. I do not want to scare people. I want to give them tools. The room reacted with low, complex noise. Some students looked intrigued. Others seemed uneasy. A soft-furred student from a peaceful ocean world lifted a hand. Why would we spend free time on stress practice? They asked quietly, when we could be taking art or music. Naomi nodded in understanding. Art and music are important too, she said. On Earth, they are some of the ways we cope with stress. I am not saying you should stop those. I am saying that a few hours learning how to think during change might make it easier to keep enjoying art and music if something ever does go wrong. An Erasi student spoke up, fingers tapping nervously. The safety committee says we should not be exposed to extreme scenarios unnecessarily, they said. They say it causes anxiety that lowers performance. Naomi thought back to emergency drills in her own schools, to the way her teachers had talked them through each step until they were almost bored. In my experience, she said, not having a plan causes more anxiety than having one. When you know where your flashlight is, or where the nearest shelter is, your brain can rest. It does not spin in circles. The point of a resilience lab would be to make you feel more prepared, not more fragile. Vel cleared their throat gently. The safety committee notice had shifted from yellow to orange in their view. They would have to file a report explaining this entire exchange. I think, Vel said, choosing words with care, that this idea has potential. But it also needs review. The collegium is responsible for student well-being. We must consider the psychological impact. Naomi turned toward them. Of course, she said at once, I am not asking to run disaster movies on a loop. I am asking to teach calm habits. We can design the lab carefully. No graphic content. No forced participation. Just simple practical exercises. Corin gave a low rumble. I would try it, they said. If only to see why humans think like this. A Yulrian sprayed a mist of agreement. I am curious, they said. We have never had to board up windows, but we do lose humidity if a seal fails. Learning backup plans might help our gardens. An Erilon student shook their head, scales catching the light. I am not sure, they said. Thinking about things going wrong makes me tense. I came to Meridian because it is safe. A small group near them nodded in agreement. Yes, another added, our counselors say we should not expose ourselves to unneeded stress. Life is already busy. Naomi listened without judgment. She understood. Many people on Earth also avoided safety meetings if they could. It was easier not to think about hard things. I respect that, she said. Really, and I do not want this to be forced on anyone. But I also think that this ring is only safe because many people you never see think about hard things all the time. Engineers, medics, system managers. They practice for failure so you can rest. A resilience lab would be a chance for regular students to share a little of that skill. She looked back at Belle. Also, she added, this is not just about dramatic events. We can practice smaller shifts, too. What do you do when a project's rules change halfway through? When a study group member is suddenly sick, when your housing unit loses power for 6 hours. These are not disasters. They are everyday tests of flexibility. The safety committee message changed again. Request meeting after class. Possible content. Moriome. All right, they said. Here's what we will do. Naomi, I would like you to submit a formal proposal for this resilience lab. I will review it and pass it to the safety committee and the curriculum board. We will see if we can design something that meets our standards. Naomi nodded. Thank you, she said. In the meantime, they said, I am not going to cut this discussion short. We will adjust the syllabus if needed. You are all adults. If this topic is uncomfortable for you, you may step out and speak with a counselor or simply take a break. No penalty. For those who wish to stay, we will continue to talk about Earth as not only a hazard case, but as a system we can learn from. A few students left quietly, moving with polite apologies. Most stayed. The hall felt different now, less like a theater, more like a lab where people were poking at a new idea from several sides. As the remaining time ticked down, Naomi answered more questions. Some were technical. How accurate are your storm models? How often do codes change? Others were personal. Were you ever really scared? Did you ever want to move somewhere calmer? She answered simply. Yes, sometimes I was very scared, she said. During one storm, the windows shook so hard, I thought they might break. We slept in the hallway away from glass. The power went out for 2 days. It was not fun, but our house held. Our neighbors shared food. When the lights came back, I felt grateful. More than usual, that feeling stayed with me. As for moving, she added, some people do. Some move from high-risk zones to lower ones if they can. But every place has some kind of risk: fire, drought, flood. Even in space, there is vacuum on the other side of the wall. I decided I would rather learn to live with motion than spend my life chasing a perfect safe place that might not exist. When the class period finally ended, students left in clusters, talking in low tones. Some argued softly about whether the safety committee was right. Others discussed how their own worlds might train different kinds of resilience. Corin approached Naomi as she was cleaning the board. Up close, their fur was striped with faint color bands, and their eyes were bright. You made us look foolish, Corin said, but there was no anger in the voice, just honesty. Naomi wiped the last bit of chalk from her fingers onto a cloth. That was not my goal, she said. I just did not want Earth to be a joke. Corin studied her for a moment. When I said humans were built out of spite, they said slowly, I did not think you would care. It was just a line. Now I see it was lazy. There's more going on there. Naomi gave a small half smile. We are built out of a lot of things, she said. Fear, love, hunger, curiosity, bad decisions, good habits, spite too sometimes, but mostly practice. Corin's mouth curled in their species version of a smile. If the resilience lab happens, they said, I will sign up. I want to see if I can keep my fur from puffing out the first time the lights go out. Naomi's smile widened slightly. That would be interesting data, she said. After they left, Naomi made her way to the administrative wing. The corridors here were quieter, lined with displays that showed energy usage, traffic flows, and other steady metrics. Everything looked calm. That did not mean everything would always stay that way. In a small meeting room, she spoke with 2 members of the safety committee by Hollow. Their images floated over the table, a serious-faced human named Dr. Dand, Amani, and a pale, thin Paralee with silver eyes named Tesh. We are not against resilience, Dr. Imani said kindly. We just need to ensure that any training you offer does not trigger undue anxiety. Naomi listened and nodded. I understand, she said. On Earth, we also learned that showing too much disaster can freeze people instead of helping them act. The lab would not use scary footage. It would use simple scenarios. The water is off for 8 hours. The main walkway is blocked. We would teach students to break large problems into small tasks. Tesh tilted their head. You are asking us to shift from a safety model based on prevention and distance, they said, to a model that also includes adaptation when prevention fails. Naomi met their gaze. I am asking you to add a backup plan to your backup plans, she said. You already know that systems can fail. You have manuals for that. This is about helping students be part of the solution when they do. The two committee members exchanged a quick look. "Submit your proposal," Dr. Amani said at last. "Include clear objectives, content outlines, and psychological safeguards. We will review it carefully. No promises beyond that." "That is all I ask," Naomi said. Later that night, back in her small dorm room overlooking one of the inner parks, Naomi sat with her tablet and started writing. She kept the language simple. She broke ideas into steps. She thought about her middle school hurricane drills, her dad's emergency kit, her neighbor Mrs. Alvarez's habit of checking on everyone's shutters before every storm. She called the proposal "Resilience Lab, Everyday Skills for Unplanned Change." The next day, when she arrived at Deathworld Studies, something on the main display caught her eye before she even reached her seat. The course title had been edited: Deathworld Studies, Hazard Worlds and Adaptive Systems. Vel stood near the front, watching students notice the change. "When I named this class," Vel said as Naomi passed by, "I did not think about how it might feel to people from those worlds." "Thank you for the reminder." Naomi nodded, a quiet warmth in her chest. "Thank you for listening," she answered, as the lights dimmed for the day's shorter montage. And Earth's blue curve appeared once again. The laughter was softer, edged with a new kind of attention. The laughter was softer, edged with a new kind of attention. Students still gasped at the sight of lightning and waves, but some also watched the people in the footage. The calm faces checking equipment, the workers in bright vests directing others. For the first time, the montage was not only a joke about a far-off death world. It was also, however faintly, a lesson in practice. Outside the ring's windows, the stars still seemed to stand almost still. Inside, in a quiet lecture hall, a small group of young minds had begun to imagine what it might mean if safety was not just something given to them, but something they could help build, even when the habitat someday blinked. Morning on Meridian Collegium looked like every other morning. Soft light glowed from the false sky, not too bright and not too dim. The air was the usual mild warmth, with a hint of green from the long interior parks. Students moved along the walkways at an easy pace, study drones floating beside them, schedule icons glowing on wristbands. Naomi walked toward the Resilience Lab classroom with her usual small backpack, a folded jacket tied at her waist, even though the ring's climate almost never shifted. Old habits were hard to let go. Today she was running a trial session, approved by the safety committee as a low-intensity adaptation workshop. The name sounded dry, but she did not care. It existed. That was enough for a start. A notice blinked on her wristband as she walked. M8's window ring Sector B7. Time 9:10 to 9:40. Expect minor system adjustments. No action required. She glanced at the sector map. The maintenance window covered an Area 2 sections away from her classroom, nearer the outer structure where the engineers worked. Routine. She tapped the notice away. The first students to arrive for the lab looked a little unsure. There were 12 of them. Corin, 2 Yorians, an Irasi, 3 humans, and a mix of others. Some carried tablets, Others looked around as if expecting dramatic simulations. Naomi smiled and greeted them simply. "Come in," she said. "You will not need anything special, just your brain and whatever you usually have in your pockets." Corin snorted quietly. "I hope you do not plan to flood the room," they said, half joking. "No floods," Naomi said. "Today's scenario is very small. Think of it as a warm-up for your mind." She started with basic drills. She gave them a simple situation. The main corridor from here to the cafeteria is blocked. In small groups, they had to find 3 alternative paths using the campus map. Then she changed the rules. Now the elevators are out. Now 2 of your group members cannot walk quickly. Now you have only 10 minutes. The students worked through each version, sometimes annoyed, sometimes amused, but mostly engaged. As they worked, the lights in the ceiling dimmed slightly, then brightened again. A few students looked up, puzzled, but the change was small enough that most ignored it. Maintenance, Naomi thought. They did this sometimes when rebalancing power. At 9:12, as the second drill ended, there was a soft, low-frequency hum in the walls, like a long sigh. The room's air felt heavier for a brief moment, then steadied. Nauma's wristband flickered with a short message. "Pressure, adjustment in progress. Expect minor variation." She frowned slightly. "Did you all get that notice?" she asked. Several students lifted their wrists. The same message blinked back at her from a few bands. A Yulrian misted itself nervously. "Is that part of Today's lab?" it asked. "No," Naomi said. "That is real maintenance. Nothing to worry about yet. They run checks like this often." Still, something in the tone of the message bothered her. The words felt a bit more urgent than usual, even with the calm phrasing. She made a mental note to keep an eye on any further alerts. They began a new exercise, listing small items each person usually carried and how those might help in an unexpected problem. A human student had a multi-tool. An Irasi had a roll of flexible tape. Corin, after some thought, admitted that their thick fur could keep someone warm if needed. At 9:19, the lights dimmed again, this time more sharply. The gentle background hum of the air systems dipped, stuttered, and then came back at a different pitch. The room's temperature shifted a few degrees cooler. The wristbands all blinked at once. Iswiz and notice. C-Tor B7 through C3. Airflow red. Stodes. Airflow reduced. Light levels reduced. No immediate danger. Remain calm. The word interruption made a few students straighten in their seats. Someone's study drone dropped a little, then caught itself. "This is still maintenance, yes?" Corin asked, ears twitching. "Probably," Naomi said, "but it is a good chance to practice for real." "Let us change Today's." She walked to the door and opened it. The corridor outside was dimmer than normal, with emergency strips beginning to glow along the floor. The false sky over the inner park had lost some of its color, shifting toward a flat gray. Far off there was the faint sound of raised voices. Naomi took a slow breath. Her heart rate was up, but her thoughts were clear. Earth had given her many mornings like this when something planned suddenly changed. She turned back to the room. New scenario, she said. Climate control is down in several sectors. Lighting is reduced. People are going to be confused. Some will be scared. Our job is to get from here to a safer area with full systems, without causing panic. We will also watch for anyone who needs extra help. A human student raised a hand, eyes wide. Is it actually unsafe here? They asked. Right now the notice says no immediate danger, Naomi said, so we are fine for the moment. But reduced airflow can become a problem if it lasts too long, and changing conditions can cause secondary issues. Also, if maintenance is not going as planned, other systems could fail. It is smart to move earlier rather than later. The Irasi student looked toward the ceiling. Should we not just wait for instructions? They asked. Naomi shook her head gently. We will follow any clear instructions we receive, but it may take time for central systems to send out detailed guidance. In the first few minutes of any problem, you only have what is in your head and what is around you. That is what we have been practicing. Small, calm decisions. She pointed to the door. First step, she said. Who here knows where the nearest designated shelter or high safety area is from this room? Do not check your maps. Just think. Silence, then a few uncertain guesses. Some pointed toward the main hall, others toward the admin wing. No one was completely sure. All right, Naomi said. Lesson 1. Always know at least 2 safe places within a short walk of wherever you spend a lot of time. Classrooms, dorms, labs, cafeterias. That habit costs nothing until you need it. For now, I know there is a main shelter in the central hub 2 sectors over, and a smaller hardened corridor 1 sector that way. She pointed left along the corridor. We will head for the smaller one first. Less distance. If it is full, we continue. Another system notice flashed. This time in brighter yellow. Sulcalized pressure variation detected in Sector B7. Engineering response in progress. Do not attempt to open exterior maintenance access points. Await further instructions. The words pressure variation tightened the air in the room more than the temperature change had. Several students looked toward the walls, as if they could see through them. Naomi felt a cold line move along her spine, but her voice stayed steady. That means there is some small leak or imbalance in the outer structure, she said. The engineers are on it. Our section is not B7, but we are close. Systems are designed with redundancy, so we have buffers. Still, this is the kind of layered issue we talk about on Earth. One system shifts, then another. The way you respond matters. She moved to the doorway and looked both ways down the corridor. Students were starting to step out of nearby rooms, confused by the dim light and the alerts. Some clutched tablets, others just stood still, watching their wristbands Naomi raised her voice enough to carry, but not enough to sound sharp. "Everyone in this room, I need you to pair up," she said. "Choose a buddy. Stay with that person, unless we say otherwise. We are going to be the front. Irasi, you have good reach and sight. You will be midline. Yelians in the center to keep your humanity stable. Humans and others mix in. No one walks alone." The students moved more quickly now, the practice from earlier nudging them into action. In less than a minute, everyone had a partner. Some looked calmer just from having a role. Naomi stepped into the corridor and held up a hand to a small cluster of students gathered there. "Do you know where your nearest hardened corridor is?" she asked, and they shook their heads, eyes wide. "Okay," she said. "We are heading to the one near the B5 intersection. Come with us if you do not have another clear route. Stay together. Follow the floor lights." She turned back to her group. "Line up behind me," she said. "Corin, help repeat directions for anyone who cannot hear me well. Irasi, watch the ceiling indicators and tell me if any turn red." Corin's fur bristled, but they nodded. "Got it," they said. "Front echo." Then they grimaced. "Sorry." "Front relay." Naomi almost laughed at the correction, but there was no time. She started walking at a steady pace. Not too fast. Running would only make fear spread faster. The corridor was busier now. The air felt a little cooler than normal, and the usual hum of the climate control was weaker. Overhead, directional lights began to pulse, pointing toward central sectors. A calm, automated voice spoke from the wall panels at intervals. "Minor system irregularities are being addressed," it said. "Please move in an orderly fashion toward core areas. Do not use lifts. Follow floor indicators." Some students seemed reassured by the voice. Others did not. Naomi could see anxiety in tight shoulders and quick steps. Naomi could see anxiety in tight shoulders. A Urian nearby sprayed too much mist and then clamped its nozzle shut, trying to save water. Naomi kept her voice clear and simple. "Check your buddy," she called back. "Ask if they are light-headed or too cold. If yes, raise your hand so we can slow down. Share water if someone needs it." Corin repeated the instructions with their deeper voice, and the line behind them rippled with small conversations. People adjusted jackets, passed drink bottles, took slow breaths together. The simple act of talking seemed to help. As they turned a corner, the lights flickered again, dropping almost to darkness before the floor strips flared bright green. There were small gasps, a few sharp breaths. Someone behind Naomi stumbled. She stopped and lifted her hand. "Everyone freeze," she said, "feet still. Count to 5 in your head." They stood in the green glow, breaths loud in the brief quiet. After 5 seconds, the overhead lights came back to a low but steady level. "See?" Naomi said. The system blinked, but it came back. That is what redundancy is for. The ring has backups. We are part of those backups. Now we move again. They reached the entrance to the hardened corridor, marked by thick doors and bold signage. A staff member stood there, tablet in hand, trying to direct a rising flow of people. Their eyes were wide, and their voice wavered a bit, as they repeated, "This way, this way. Please, stay calm." Naomi stepped up beside them. "How is it inside?" she asked quietly. "Filling, but not full," the staff member said. "We are still waiting on full diagnostic from engineering. Some pressure sensors are reading off in B7 and BE. In person and B height, they are isolating sections." "Good," Naomi said. "We have about 20 here, plus more behind us. Let us move people in batches. Also, are there any other safe corridors open on this level yet?" The staffer blinked, then checked their tablet. "Yes, 2 more just came online," they said. C2 and C4. They were supposed to be part of a later upgrade, but engineering brought them up early. "Then we should not cram everyone into this one," Naomi said. "Can you flag some flows toward the others?" The staff member stared at her for a second, then nodded and started tapping faster, sending updated directions to the wall panels. New arrows lit up, pointing some groups toward other routes. Naomi turned to her students. All right," she said. "First half of us goes in now. The rest wait right here in the hall. No pushing. If you feel faint, sit against the wall. Yularians, you stay near the corridor entrance to keep your moisture level stable. Corin, you go in with the first group and help settle them. I will stay with the second half until we know where to send them." Corin's ears twitched. "You are splitting the group?" they asked. "Just for a short time," Naomi said. "We have to spread out. Too many bodies in one small space will make the air stuffy quickly. That is another kind of risk." The first group moved into the hardened corridor, where the walls were thicker and the air felt more stable. Naomi watched until she saw them find spots along the benches inside. Then something new happened. The ring's gravity lowered by a fraction of a percent. It was subtle, just enough that everyone's steps felt a bit lighter. But it was there. A few smaller students swayed. A piercing alarm tone cut through the corridor, followed by a voice that was no longer fully calm. "Attention all sectors adjacent to B7, it said. We are experiencing a contained pressure drop in outer ring segments. Structural seals are holding. Gravity modulation engaged to reduce stress. Please proceed to designated safe areas. Do not attempt to access windows or maintenance areas. Do not attempt to access windows or maintenance areas." The word pressure drop snapped whatever thin hold some people had on their fear. Someone started to run. Others raised their voices. Naomi felt a rush of panic press against her thoughts, but she pushed it back. She had felt worse wind. She cupped her hands around her mouth. "Stop running," she called. "You will only knock someone over. The best thing you can do for the engineers is not to add injuries." Her voice cut just enough through the noise to make a few students stop. Corin stepped partly out of the corridor and added their deeper tone. "Listen to her," they said. "You want to help? Then move like you are in a crowded lab. not a stampede. We are Keth, not frightened herd animals. The small joke reached some ears and eased a few shoulders. Naomi scanned the hall. A small Illyrian was pressed flat against the wall. Fronds pulled tight in. Mist bottle clutched hard. A thin, airy land student stood frozen in the middle of the corridor, eyes wide and unfocused, breathing too fast. Naomi moved to the airy land first. She stopped at arm's length and spoke slowly. "Look at me," she said. "Inhale for 4 counts. Samaya, hail. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. Do it with me." She breathed in and held up fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then she held, then breathed out. After a second, the Arylan copied her, shoulders shaking. They did it 3 times. Their breathing slowed enough that their eyes could focus again. "Good," Naomi said softly. "Now take my hand. We are going to move to the wall. It is safer there if someone bumps you." She guided them to a spot near the hardened corridor door, then turned to the Ulrian. "Is your water level okay?" she asked. The Ulrian gave a shaky spritz. "Lower than I like," it said. "The air is drier now." Naomi checked the wall panel. "We will be inside soon," she said. "For now, stay close to this door. The seal leaks a bit of cooled, regulated air into this area while it cycles. It will help you more than the middle of the hall." She made sure the Orion was steady, then looked back toward the direction they had come from. More students were arriving, guided by other staff. Some looked confused, others controlled. Naomi saw Vel among them, moving quicker than usual, their usual calm face now clearly worried. Vel's eyes found Naomi at once. "Park," they called. "What is your status here?" "We have one hardened corridor partly filled, and 2 more open nearby," Naomi said, stepping closer so they did not have to shout. "We are splitting flows to keep air quality stable and reduce crowding. Some people are panicking, but small groups are calming each other. Any news from engineering?" Vel shook their head. "Partial only," they said. A micrometeor swarm hit close to B7 during the maintenance window. The auto shutters closed, but a few sensors reported pressure changes. They are sealing off tiny leaks and testing backup seals. They say the ring is stable, but they want everyone away from outer walls. Naomi felt a brief spike of alarm. Micrometeors during maintenance was bad timing, but not impossible. She thought of how on Earth heavy rain often came during roof repairs, or how equipment sometimes failed right when it was needed most. "Okay," she said. "So we stay away from exterior view decks and stairs that lead toward the shell." "Good. Our comm lines with Central still up?" "Mostly," Vel said. "Some lag. The safety committee is sending out breathing exercises and reminder messages. But I see you are already doing some of that." Naomi glanced at the students clustered near her, talking quietly with their buddies, checking in on each other. Her lab group had spread the habits into nearby clusters without even thinking about it. "We will keep it up," she said. "Vel, can you coordinate with the other hardened corridors?" Vel's eyes widened very slightly. "You are giving me orders now?" they asked, a hint of dry humor slipping through their strain. "I am asking you to do what you are good at," Naomi said. "You have authority here. Use it. I will handle this end." Vel stared at her for a heartbeat, then nodded once sharply. "All right," they said. "I will be back with updates." As time passed, the emergency settled into a strange new normal. The lights stayed low but steady. Gravity remained slightly reduced but workable. The air was cooler, but the flow did not stop. Students and staff filled the hardened corridors and central hubs. People sat close together on benches and against walls, talking quietly, sharing water, adjusting jackets. Naomi moved through the groups in her section, checking in, answering questions, making small adjustments. She reminded people to eat small snacks, if they had them, to keep blood sugar steady. She suggested simple tasks to anxious hands. Count how many people are in your section. Memorize the route from here to the nearest restroom. Memorize the route. Make sure everyone near you knows where their emergency mask is. At one point, she found Corin sitting with their back against the wall. Two smaller students half leaning against their thick fur for warmth. Corin looked up as she approached. "You were right," Corin said. "My fur is useful." Their voice shook, but there was a small smile in it. Naomi sat briefly on her heels beside them. "So is your voice," she said. "Thank you for repeating directions out there." Corin huffed softly. "I thought your lab would be boring," they said. "Now I am glad I came. I knew what a buddy check was. I knew how to breathe on purpose." Naomi nodded once. "Good," she said. "That is exactly the point." After what felt like an hour but was probably less, a new message came through on everyone's wristbands and the wall panels. SY STEM update. Outer ring Mysore fractures in Sector B. Backup seals holding. Climate control restoration in Prague. Gravity will gradually return to baseline. Please remain in safe areas. Untiled finale confirmation. A low sigh moved through the corridor, almost like a wave. Shoulders dropped. Some students laughed weakly. A Yulrian sprayed a grateful mist. Naomi closed her eyes for a second and let herself feel the relief. Then she opened them again. "We are not fully clear yet," she said to the nearest group. "But this is very good news. The ring is holding. The engineers did their job. Now we stay patient until final check." One of the human students frowned. "If the leaks were tiny," they said, "why did it feel so big?" "Because we are not used to any change at all," Naomi said softly. "A small shift in a still world feels huge. On Earth, systems blink all the time. We build habits around that. Meridian just had its first real blink in a long time." When final confirmation came through, nearly an hour later, the message was simple and clear. System status stable. M18s complete. All critical seals verified. Climate and gravity restoring to normal levels. Over next 30 minutes, you may return to your regular activities. Counseling services available. The hardened corridor doors slid open with a low hiss. Light from the main hall spilled in, brighter now as systems ramped back up. The fall sky overhead flickered, then settled into its usual soft blue. People stepped out in small groups, blinking, stretching, shifting back into their daily shapes. There was more talking now, some excited, some quiet. The ring had felt fragile for an hour, and now it felt safe again. But something in the students' understanding had shifted. Vel found Naomi near the door, where she was helping a Urian adjust a slipping mist strap. "The safety committee would like to see you," Vel said. "Me as well, but first, they asked me to say this." They paused, as if tasting the words. "Thank you," Val said, "for keeping people calm." The monitor logs showed that areas where your lab students were present had fewer panic spikes and fewer injuries from pushing and falls. Naomi blinked, taken aback for a moment. "I only did what any Earth kid would do," she said. "We are taught to look around, see who needs help, and start with the nearest thing." Vel's mouth curved slightly. "That is exactly what they want to talk to you about?" They said, "Come." The meeting with the safety committee did not feel like the cautious discussion from a few days before. Dr. Mani and Tesh both looked tired, but relieved. Several screens behind them showed graphs of pressure changes, heart rate averages, and crowd densities in different sectors. "The event was contained," Dr. Imani said. "Engineering did excellent work. But so did you, Naomi. The data is clear. Sectors where Resilience Lab participants were present had smoother movement and lower panic indicators. People copied their behavior. This likely reduced the strain on staff and kept emergency routes clearer." Naomi listened, hands folded in her lap. "I am glad everyone is safe," she said. "The engineers did the hardest part, yes," Tesh said. "But your habits filled a gap. Our training has focused on preventing problems and on staff responses. We have not done as much with everyday student behavior. Today showed us that this is an important weak point." Doctor showed us that this is an important weak point. Imani leaned forward. "We would like to expand your resilience lab," they said. "Not make it mandatory, at least not yet, but offer it widely. We also want to work with you and Instructor Vel to redesign Deathworld studies into a course on hazard worlds and adaptive practices. Less spectacle, more skills." Naomi felt something warm and heavy, subtle in her chest, a mix of relief and responsibility. "I can help with that," she said, "but I will not do it alone. There are other Earth students here, and there are students from other variable worlds, too. They have their own skills." "Good," Tesh said. "Bring them in. This should not be a single-person show. We do have one concern, Dr. Bond," Imani added. "We need to keep the material suitable for students who are not used to high stress. No graphic disaster footage, no horror stories. Focus on simple, calm actions. Can you agree to that? Naomi nodded. Yes, she said. On Earth, the best drills feel almost boring after a while. That is how you know they are working. People roll their eyes, then later they move without thinking too hard. That is what we want here. After the meeting, Naomi and Vel walked slowly toward the lecture hall. The ring felt normal again. The air was back to its usual temperature. The gravity had returned to the gentle pull that most students liked. But here and there, Naomi saw little signs of change. But here and there, Naomi saw little signs of change. A student pausing to check a safety map on the wall. A group quietly discussing where their nearest hardened corridor was. Someone practicing a slow breathing pattern while walking. In the next Deathworld studies session, the hall filled a little earlier than usual. Word of the maintenance incident had spread, and so had word of Naomi's role. Some students looked at her with open curiosity, others with a new kind of respect. A few seemed slightly embarrassed, remembering how they had laughed at Earth before. When the lights dimmed, Vel walked to the front with a different posture than before. They did not open with a joke. Before we begin, Vel said, I want to acknowledge what happened yesterday. The ring experienced its first real multi-layered systems issue in many years. Engineering responded quickly and effectively. Many staff and students helped keep things calm. Among them was Naomi Park, our human exchange student, whose habits from her so-called Deathworld turned out to be very useful here. There was a soft round of applause, not loud and wild, but sincere. Naomi felt heat rise to her face and kept her eyes on the desk. Vel continued. In light of this, and after discussion with the safety committee and curriculum board, we are adjusting this course. The old title Deathworld Studies will stay for now, because it is familiar, but the focus is changing. We will still study harsh worlds, including Earth, but we will also study what those worlds teach about resilience, planning, and community behavior. In short, how to live well when systems are not as stable as we wish they were. They turned to the board and brought up the old Earth montage. The dramatic music swelled. The storms raged. The volcano glowed. But this time, Vel paused the video frequently. At a shot of people boarding up windows, they said, notice the pattern. They work in pairs, sometimes in groups. They check each other's boards. This is redundancy in action at the human level. At a clip of people walking through snow, shovels in hand, Vel said, look at their posture. Tired, yes, but steady. This is not panicked fleeing. This is calm work after an event. Recovery habits matter as much as preparations. At a medical scene showing masked nurses moving quickly, Vel focused the zoom. They have protocols, they said. They are not improvising every action. They practiced this. That is why they can move fast without chaotic collisions. The class watched in a new way. There was still the thrill of wild weather and bright danger, but there was also attention to the small, steady actions of the people on the screen. Near the back, Corin raised a hand. Instructor, they said, would it be fair now to say humans are built out of practice rather than spite? A ripple of soft laughter moved through the hall, not mocking, but warm. Vel smiled. I think Naomi might have a better phrase, Vel said, looking back at her. Naomi hesitated, then spoke up just enough for the room to hear. We are built out of learning, she said. Sometimes the hard way. But we keep trying to do it before the next storm, not only after. Later, as the class ended, a student from a very gentle world stopped Naomi near the door. Their skin had the faint shimmer of a species from a planet with stable light and mild seas. I used to watch those videos and feel lucky, they said. Lucky that my world is not like that. Now I feel. I do not know the right word. Maybe. Grateful that yours taught you things you could share with us. It makes the galaxy feel less fragile, somehow, knowing there are beings who grew up with moving ground. Naomi smiled, just a little. Your world taught you other things, she said. Patience, probably. Balance. Long-term care. If we trade lessons, all of us get stronger. As the student walked away, Naomi looked up at the false sky. For a moment, she let herself imagine the real sky outside the ring. Dark, deep, and full of quiet, cold danger. Even here, safety was not a natural state. Stages. Haiti was not a natural state. It was an active project. Earth was still far away, turning under its fast clouds, sending storms toward coasts and snow toward mountains, growing new microbes in warm pools and shifting rivers across plains. People there were still checking forecasts, boarding up windows, washing hands, revising building codes, texting family before a big storm. Here in the ring, students were starting to do smaller versions of those things, checking safety maps, choosing meeting points, thinking of their daily paths as part of a system they could understand, not just a background they walked through. Deathworld, Naomi thought, the old word feeling less sharp now. Maybe the galaxy had used it to laugh and point. Maybe now it could use it to learn. She headed toward the resilience lab room, where a new group of students was already waiting outside, talking quietly. A sign on the door, newly printed, read Lian's skills for living with change. All species welcome. Naomi opened the door and stepped inside. The habitat had blinked once. It would blink again someday. When it did, more people here would know how to breathe, how to look around, and how to start with the nearest small helpful thing. That was the real lesson her moving world had given her. Not how to fight storms with heroics, but how to treat every shift as another chance to practice staying kind, calm, and prepared in a universe that did not owe anyone steady ground.